some general discussion. We will have, as you can see, this is a recorded session. We'll have some general discussion, a breakout, and some more discussion after that. I do want to mention real quickly, we're nearing the back end of an 18-month process that has involved the development of extensive educational resources for the public, an extensive public engagement program that included charrettes, town hall meetings, listening sessions with over 50 groups, organizations, and individuals, multiple surveys. We had one for business and one for the public, and a lot of effort has been put into that. We also worked through that to develop pathways of how we can change and transform our community toward clean and renewable energy. And in that process, we continue to concern ourselves and address and look at it from an equity standpoint as we develop those processes and the pathways. But today we want to just pause and take one really focused look at equity in relationship to our clean and renewable pathways that we've been developing in the plan that we will present to the mayor and commission. And if adopted, we'll then try to implement across the community. So we have Diamond Spratling here with GreenLinks, and she's going to lead us through that process to take the time to pause and say, okay, we've gotten this far. We've looked at it from this standpoint, and now we're going to focus hard on that. That was my echo. So without any more from me, let me turn it over to Diamond to get us going. And of course, throughout this whole process, please participate. That's why you're here. And if there's questions, please ask them. So Diamond, all to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you all for joining us. Again, my name is Diamond Spratling. I'm with GreenLink Analytics, and I am our GEM project manager. And I am super excited and thrilled for this session today, centered all around equity. But before we get to the good stuff, I'm going to actually pass it over to Maria to do quick introductions. Go ahead, Maria. And next slide.
Hello, I'm Maria from South Face. You've probably seen me quite a bit. Aaron also is joining us from South Face as well. So we thought we could just kind of quickly go through and do an attendance. I'm just gonna go through and maybe if y'all would just go through one by one and introduce yourself and provide your pronouns if you'd like. Can start with Dan, if that's good.
Yeah, I'm Dan Everett. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm with 100% Athens Group.
Yeah, you mentioned the group, thanks.
Tom.
Hi, Tom Lawrence, professor of practice at University of Georgia, and I'm representing the U.S. Green Building Council group.
She's here, I know that.
I think you broke out, Maria. It was a call for Ilka.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hi, this is Ilka McConnell with Athens-Clarke County Economic Development.
Did we lose Maria?
You hear me?
We can hear you now.
Now we can.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh. Okay. I was gonna say, Michael, if you wanted to go next with then Amy going after him.
Yeah, I'm Michael Songster. I'm here representing 100% Athens.
I'm Amy Kassane, and I'm here representing W&A Engineering.
Perfect. Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Johnson from the Athens Housing Authority, property manager here. And I'm really sitting in for Charlie. He had another meeting, but I was at the last presentation that Mike presented last year, maybe, I think.
Joseph.
Hi, Joseph D'Angelo, Chief Data Officer, Athens-Clarke County.
Samantha from Greenland.
Shane, you want to go next?
Yes, sir. Shane Blackwell, Northeast Georgia Black Chamber of Commerce.
Sayla?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sayla Gardner with the ACC Gov Inclusion Office.
Alfie?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Alfie Vick. I'm faculty at the College of Environment and Design at UGA, but I'm here representing USGBC Athens branch.
And Quint?
I'm Quint Newcomer, representing Architectural Collaborative.
Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather Benham, Executive Director of the Athens Land Trust.
All right. Carrie, are you on yet? We're doing introductions. All right. Toddy, you want to go next?
Hey, my name's Toddy. I'm with Athens-Clarke County, filling in for Beth Smith today.
And John?
John Newland with Joma Construction, and I'm representing the Athens Area Home Builders Association.
Is that all the CAB members? Aaron, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Say hi.
Hello, everybody. I'm Aaron with Athens-Clarke County Planning Department, soon to be Sustainability Office.
So Carrie, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Carrie Ritzler with 100% Athens.
Did we get to Susan? She's muted. Oh, it almost came. And the 706 number, the 3570. Is that you, Susan?
No, no.
Okay.
I'm Susan, representing Action Incorporated today. Thank you.
All right, who's lurking on the phone? We will find out. Okay, Southface, you want to introduce yourself, followed by Greenlink? And if I left anybody out, did I leave anybody out? Did we leave anybody out yet? So go ahead, Southface, and followed by Greenlink.
My name is Erin Gallagher. I'm with South Base's Sustainable Cities team.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is Maria Weber, also with the South Bay Sustainable Cities team.
Hi all, this is Robert Reed. I'll be just sort of standing by on this meeting in particular for any sort of technical questions around sustainability from the South Bay side.
Sam, you or Matt?
Hi, I'm Samantha from Greenlink. She, her, hers. I think that's all I'm supposed to say. And then Matt, you can go.
I'll take up the back here. I'm Matt Cox. I'm the CEO of Greenlink. I use he, him pronouns. Pleasure to see everybody today.
Awesome. Did we get everyone? I don't want to miss anyone. Okay. We'll figure out who's that calling in on the phone. All right, so I think we got through the introductions. Thanks for picking that up for us, Mike. Maria, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so first I just want to give everyone an overview of what we plan to address and talk about today in the next hour and 45 minutes that we have left together. So we've done our welcome, we've done our introductions, we know who everyone is. Feel free to answer that question in the chat as well. What are you excited about to talk about today? What do you want to know? What are type of things that you've been thinking about as it relates to equity? So feel free to answer that. The next couple of slides, I'm actually going to be spending some time to talk about Athens equity goals and all the really cool things that we've been up to in the past couple of months. And then we'll do a few activities. So we have 2 activities planned for today. The first one is centered around ensuring that the clean energy plan is significantly addressing equity, because that's why all of us are here. We're excited about equity. And then the second activity that we have is really centered around imagining what this equitable Athens truly looks like and how you all can best be engaged within that process. So those are the 2 activities that we have planned for today. And then we'll just end off by doing a close and talk about a few next steps. Next slide. Okay. So I'm going to kick things off for the next couple of minutes, probably about 20 minutes, to give you all an overview of what exactly these Athens equity goals are. And if anyone has any questions as well, feel free to drop them in the chat. I believe we have Erin monitoring the chat for us. So if you have any questions, definitely let us know. If you have any thoughts too, we're happy to hear that as well. Next slide. So I just wanted to start off very simple and really show you all how Athens is actually defining equity. So I am going to actually read this statement because I think it's critical for us to understand what definition we have decided to use in order to define equity. So we're saying that equity means the justice, fairness, and including the different lived experiences, and emphasis on those lived experiences, but also the backgrounds and the needs of individuals and groups and policies and practices in order to close those gaps and improve outcomes. And I've bolded and underlined that statement right there because I think that is a really critical piece. We want to make sure that we close those gaps and improve those outcomes, especially for communities and neighborhoods that are suffering disproportionately. But the other piece of this definition is equity requires the evaluation of policies and processes in order to ensure that we are identifying and essentially eliminating disparities and moving towards an Athens-Clarke County where identity is no longer a predictor of outcomes. That is our ultimate goal here, and that's what we are using in order to define equity. And you can actually find this definition too on ACC's website under the Equity and Inclusion Office. Next slide. So we've learned about how we are defining equity, which I think is great. But the next side of things is to make sure that we are truly committed to what we've defined equity as. So I think that that's probably even a bigger question of, well, how are we committing ourselves to this idea of equity? And so I've included this commitment here as well. I think this is just as important. And I'm going to read this off as well too. And I want you all to pay special attention to those same just words that I have here that I've tried to emphasize as being very critical and very important. So we're saying here, we commit to taking consistent action because we can't just do it one time and say, okay, we've done our duty, we've done our job. We have to make sure that we are being very consistent when it comes to equity and continuing to check in on our communities. So in order to identify and close those gaps that we just talked about in the definition of equity, in order to increase positive outcomes throughout our community, but also we implement policies and procedures to ensure fair treatment and access to resources, 2 things that are very, very critical. We want to be fair to everyone, but we also want to give people the opportunity to have access to those resources that are very critical for us. And then the second half of this commitment includes evaluating and assessing the impact of our policies on residents and staff to really ensure that we are responding to populations based on specific identified needs rather than assumptions. And I voted that statement based on specific identified needs because That's exactly right. We are doing these things like the charrette and like working with our communities because we want to better understand, well, what are the specific needs within the community with instead of how traditionally we've seen just having those assumptions. That's not how we want to go about equity. We want to make sure that we are being very inclusive in this process. So that's the definition, and then also the commitment to equity. So just wanted to level set so that everyone is aware of what exactly Athens' commitment is and how we are defining equity. Next slide. Okay, so now I want to take a few moments to actually talk about, well, what exactly are Athens, like, what are our equity goals? And so I've identified 2 of them here. And, I also would love for you all to get you all's thoughts and everything like that as well, which we'll get into in the first activity. So the first thing that I think we've been very committed to is just this commitment to process and making sure that we are being very equitable, very holistic in our process towards the clean energy plan. Oh, can you all hear me? A little bit. Okay, it's getting a little bit of feedback. I just wanted to make sure no one's missing this information. So the first thing that we have here is the commitment to process. So making sure that we are being very intentional and very equitable in the process of even just brainstorming about the clean energy plan, even just thinking about it, or even before we get to that implementation side of things, we want to make sure that our process is together right first. And so that's very critical for the brainstorming phase, the implementation, the monitoring, the evaluation phase, really all of it. Because if we're not being very equitable in our process, then we're going to see negative outcomes essentially when it comes to the implementations and the projects and the programs that we are getting in return. So that's the commitment to process. But the other thing that I want to highlight as well is our goal of reducing EB, which is energy burden, and its associated risks. So Athens has taken strides to make sure that internally we are aware of the disparities. We are aware that there are neighborhoods within our community that have relatively high energy burden. Actually, if you all didn't know, some of the highest energy burden across the entire state, which definitely says something. And Athens is committed to wanting to reduce that energy burden significantly. So I think that that is one major piece in making sure that we're being equitable, but also understanding that energy burden doesn't act alone. It's not just, okay, energy burden is high in this area. It's that energy burden is impacting social economic issues, health equity issues, really so many other different sectors that are very interdisciplinary. And so we have to understand that when we see high energy burden, a lot of times we're going to see high asthma rates, for example, different issues in housing as well. And so I think that that's a very critical piece, and that's something that Athens has understood in being able to communicate that, especially within the clean energy plan too. All right, next slide. Okay, so in the next couple of slides, I want to actually talk a little bit about what the current equity efforts are, what we've done particularly to date. So we've identified existing inequities, in which I'll get into specifically in the next slide. We've hosted this equity charrette that we're taking part of today, but we've also developed an equity score, which you all will see in the next few slides as well, and know how important that piece is too, especially within the implementation process. Next slide. Okay, so just starting off a little bit about what exactly we've done to identify the existing inequities in Athens. And so I think that that is really the first piece here. We have to make sure that we understand exactly what the inequities are, where they exist, what's going on, in order for us to accurately address it. We have to know what in the world is going on and understand the current landscape within Athens as it relates to inequities. So within the plan, specifically within the first couple of chapters, we've done tons of research and identified different statistics, including mapping from our GreenLink equity map that helps to actually show, well, what areas are significantly energy burdened? Where are we seeing the areas that are hurt the most? Where are those disparities at? And so that has been a very critical piece so that it can show that we are understanding where the areas are that have the greatest need, but also do it in a very visually appealing way. I think that that's another critical piece as well. And so we've also done our job to address the relationship between energy and health implications in Athens. So you'll see that that is also in the report as well. But then we've also done some work within the report to make sure that we are highlighting which areas are disproportionately impacted by energy burden as well. And so our vulnerable communities, when we talk about whether it's that BIPOC communities or the aging population or areas that have high disability. Those are all issues, or those are all areas that we want to make sure that we're addressing. Next slide. Okay. And so now you all are actually taking part in hosting or in being a part of this equity-centered charrette. And so I think this is a very critical piece because it allows us to take what we know and understand actually what the what equitable processes we need to take. What do we need to do? How do we engage the right people? And what more do we do as far as equity in the clean energy plan? And so we've put this amazing group together so that we can better understand, well, what are our strengths as it relates to equity and the components of the plan, but what are areas that we need to improve on? And what would you like to see, especially in the implementation phase, I think will be very critical for us to better understand after this charrette. The other thing is just engage you all in the decisions and just getting your input on what you think we need to integrate into the plan as it relates to equity. Next slide. Okay. So the last thing I'll address here is that we've developed an equity scoring process, and I'll have either Erin or Maria drop that policy toolkit into the chat so that everyone knows what I'm talking about here. But I think that this is a very critical piece here because it takes, it takes what we've learned, it takes what we said that we would do, but it provides a very measurable tool that allows you to say, okay, well, which programs have the greatest impact or greatest potential to support equity specifically within Athens? And so you'll see that that spreadsheet will kind of outline all the different programs or initiatives that are just in the thought processes and better understand, well, what are those equity scores and what do we need to do, or which ones should we be prioritizing so that we can address equity within Athens significantly. So that's a really great tool to be able to monitor and evaluate all of our practices. Next slide. Okay. So, and I'll have Maria or Erin drop another link in there so that you all can have just a hard copy of what these scores mean. But I want to talk a little bit about what it means to develop these equity scores and what exactly a +2, a 0, and a -2 even means. So just to start off, a +2 means that we're having a very high impact on energy burden or very easy scalability. So this is very likely to reduce inequity. So yes, we want things that have a +2 on here. This could probably be the best possible outcome, at least to me. And then you have the +1 here as well. And so this is a positive outcome, and +1 means that there is a high impact on energy burden or easy scalability, potential to reduce inequities. And so this is still really well. I wouldn't say it's a +2, but it is still a great outcome, I would say. But then we also have a score of a 0. And so a 0 could mean that there is absolutely no impact at all. So this program or initiative would have either no impact on equity or inequity. So it's not really helping or harming in a sense. So that's what a 0 would be. Whereas a -1 is showing that the program has a low impact on energy burden or limited scalability, if you will, and a potential to exacerbate inequity, which is not particularly something that we would necessarily want, for example. But then we have -2. And so this is a very negative outcome in which there's a very low impact on energy burden or very limited scalability and likely to exacerbate inequities, which I feel like no one in this room would want a -2 score of exacerbating inequities, because we are all here because we're committed to equity. All right, and hopefully that was clear to you all as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so hopefully that was not too much information here. And Maria or Aaron, definitely let me know if there's any questions in the chat. But what I do want to do is I want to take the time to go over to our very first activity, which will be centered around ensuring the clean energy plan significantly addresses equity. Next slide. Okay, so just to give you an overview of what this activity is going to entail. So I've just basically gone through and showed you what the plan has been for equity in the clean energy plan and all the great things that we've done so far. But now we want to take a step back and better understand and evaluate our efforts. So we welcome all of you all's thoughts. We're actually going to do a poll in which we're going to drop the link in here for you in just a moment, and you'll be able to click on that link, and we're going to go through each question one by one so that we can better understand, well, what are your thoughts based off of what you've heard so far? What are your ideas? What are your recommendations or feedback for improving our work to date? And then after each question, we're going to go ahead and have a discussion. I would love to know for those who say that, well, it was great. You know, I'd love to hear about that, but I also would love to hear if you think, well, we need to do a little bit more work as well. So we definitely welcome all of your thoughtful feedback as well. So that's the overview of the activity. And I'm actually going to have Aaron or Maria, if you drop, I don't know if you dropped the link in there just yet for the poll. Thanks. Okay, there's an error in here, the poll. It should be ev.com/027. Okay, let's see if this works now. Okay, you all should be able to click on that link and let me know if the link does not work for you.
It's not working for me.
Okay, let me try this again just to make sure. Okay.
Probably needs to have a, an actual web address. There we go.
Yep, let's see. Oh, the second one worked, okay. Yeah, there was a spelling error in the first one. Okay.
It did work when I copied and pasted.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure. Okay, so hopefully everyone has access to the link. Yes, if not, definitely let me know. But our first question here is, what is your impression of ACC government's commitment to and definition of equity? Do you strongly agree with both of those statements? And Maria, it may be helpful to go back to the slide where I have the equity definition. Other way, sorry. Be great to see. Yep, that one's good. So what are your thoughts? What are your impressions? Do you agree with both of the statements? Or do they look pretty good? Are you like, I don't know, this isn't really hitting the mark? I would love to know what your thoughts are. And I'll give people a few moments as well.
So we vote for one and we wait until you move on to the next one. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. All right, because I kept looking for submit.
No. I'm slowing you guys down a little bit. And Maria, do you mind doing a stop share? I'm going to share my screen so we can see the results so far. Thanks so much. All right, let's see if you all can see this. Okay, you should be able to see what the poll results are so far. Looks like we're still getting some votes in here. What is your impression of ACC government's commitment to and definition of equity? A lot for about 53% for I strongly agree with both of the statements. We got about 35% saying I agree with both of the statements and about 12% at I neither agree or disagree with both statements. Awesome. Let me know if there's a few trickling in still. And I'd love to actually dig a little bit deeper in this. And if anyone feels comfortable, please let me know, for those of you who said, I strongly agree, what prompted you to click option A? And for those, who said, I agree, or I neither agree or disagree, I'd love to know.
I guess this is probably appropriate for me as the interim inclusion officer to kind of pipe in here, as these were developed by our inclusion office. It was the prior inclusion officer and myself, based off of really what we were hearing in the community, what we were hearing from our staff, and what we know about our locality. And I can tell you, we poured over it to kind of be sure that we came up with something that felt tangible and understandable. And I will say that we did also come up with short versions, and the short version of equity is aiming to close the gaps. So that's feedback from the inclusion office, and I thank you again for adding these in so that we can start to develop like a shared understanding, because equity is hard to understand. There's so many definitions, and we did think that this was the first step in our organization to really start cohesively coming together behind the terms and working collaboratively to kind of aim to close the gaps.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I chose that I strongly agree, because I agree with what Stella just stated. I felt when I read it that that our concerns have been listened to. That's how I felt as a person reading it. So I agree with the terminology that was included in the statements.
Absolutely. That's a very key point of feeling like our voices are heard. Thank you for sharing. Any other thoughts?
So I actually did neither agree nor disagree, and it was primarily the use of the word fairness, which I think is a very, very malleable word, and certainly what one person thinks is fair is not the same as what another person thinks is fair. And people who have better access, if things are provided equally, may actually be able to access it better than people who have less access. And so I guess that's the reason that I was kind of on the fence on that second bit.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think that's a very critical point that you bring up in this concept of, well, what in the world is fair? Because what's fair to me is not fair to someone else. So that's definitely a critical point. And I feel like I've definitely heard that comment before, especially as it relates to, this concept of equality as well, hence why we've transitioned over to equity. So, all right. Go ahead. Oh no, feel free.
I was just gonna say, maybe I was confused, but I felt like it's based on the questions you were asking. It's like we're supposed to say how we feel about the definition and how we feel about the commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I feel okay about the definition, I don't feel so great about the commitment, or I'm not so convinced that. And it's hard. I mean, I don't know how you say the government as a whole is committed in this way, because it's a collection of a ton of different individuals that are coming at it from different places. And so I'm not 100% sold that the commitment is completely there from everybody. And so that's why I'm like, I couldn't, anyway, that's why I was coming at it. So I also answered the same thing Michael did, because I didn't agree with both of them, so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Heather. And I appreciate you giving your thoughts as well. Definitions or defining a term is different from committing to it and showing that commitment as well. All right. So you all should now be able to see what the second question is. Let me know if you cannot, but I'm going to share my screen again. And the second question is, how satisfied are you with Athens' efforts to center our clean energy plan around equity? And I'll do a screen share again so you can see. Very satisfied, moderately satisfied, neither satisfied or unsatisfied, moderately unsatisfied, or very unsatisfied.
How do we get to the next question? I'm still stuck on the first question.
Me too.
Oh no, okay, here, let me see. You may have to click the link one more time so that you can see.
Okay, so keep clicking the link.
Cut out. Let me know if you're still having issues.
I'm still having some issues.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not coming up.
Okay.
It automatically popped up on mine.
Yeah, mine's not working either. I'm still stuck on the first question.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
Troubleshoot this.
I think mine's just popped up by itself after me clicking on everything.
Mine worked. Does it help if you refresh?
I just tried that. It didn't
Okay.
bring the second question up.
We'll drop the link here again. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I tried to refresh also and didn't work. So
what's the second question?
So the second question is, how satisfied are you with Athens' efforts to center our clean energy plan around equity?
I don't know what this is.
I'm kind of new to this process. This is the first meeting I've been to, so my response would be based on what I've heard so far this afternoon.
if you click on the link again that you sent, it goes to that question.
Yeah.
You know, the new link and the links in the chat.
Yes.
I'm surprised. You've been 2 years of UGA. You haven't done much Zoom. Oh, come on.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Hopefully this is working a little bit better for folks, but if not, feel free to also voice your thoughts as well. Or if you want to just write something in the chat, if that feels more comfortable for you too. So I see a few thoughts here trickling in, but I'd love to dissect this some more also. So does anyone have any thoughts for those who've either said very satisfied, moderately satisfied, or even if you're one of the folks who said neither satisfied or unsatisfied? I'd love to hear more.
Well, I said neither satisfied or unsatisfied. I think that in terms of the cab, I think we have certainly talked about this a lot and made a commitment. And I think that, I think the desire to do something is real. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure if we're where we can really, in some ways, I feel like we're too spread out if you look at the different efforts, like the Athens-Clarke County efforts, that we have the most control over those. That's probably going to be in the end, the easiest thing to do. The equity, some of the significant equity pieces are probably some of the most complicated. And I almost feel like maybe we need to, rather than trying to cover all of our bases, really pick a few that we set a time frame for and dig deep in and really make a commitment to, because cost-wise and complication-wise and getting people engaged, they're going to be our most challenging. And I think we've got a lot of things in the plan that are talking about equity, but I'm just not sure how easy it's going to be in the end to implement them.
It's a really great point. Thank you for sharing.
I said very satisfied, and I think that's one of the things that I guess going in to start all this process, I wasn't expecting to have as much focus on that, and it's kind of cool. That's one of the things that when I've talked about this whole idea to other people, you know, I tell them that it's not the only emphasis, but it's one, you know, one big part of it, and so that's why I put A.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I put A because I was on the Splash 2020 committee, and I know they put money aside to, you know, help fund clean energy as well. So I think that's a step in the right direction to make an effort. So for the community to vote on it, for me is very satisfying to see that we're heading in the right direction.
Absolutely. Awesome.
And I wanted to mention that I said very satisfied because of all the effort that people throughout this process have continued to focus and to mention and to really think about and delve into. I think we still got a long way to go, because it's one thing to have the effort to do it. It's the other, what is it going to look like at the end? I think we just have to be diligent in our efforts this forward to continue that same process.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, I have another question for you all, and I'm hoping this one works a little bit better than the last one did as far as the tech. Let me know if you are not able to see the new question, but you should now be seeing a question that says, how equitable would you say our plan is based on what you've heard or seen up to today? And you may have to click the chat again, if possible. Right. Do screen share again so you all can see. Okay, I see some responses trickling in. Very equitable, moderately equitable, neither equitable or inequitable, and moderately inequitable or very inequitable.
Can you put that link in the chat again?
I sure can.
Yeah, because when I click, I'm clicking the old one, I guess.
Okay, let's see if it'll work for you. Now I have another trick up my sleeve. Okay. All right, seems like we have some responses for moderately equitable and very equitable. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and what your reasoning behind your selection.
I didn't get the vote.
Oh no. Let's see here.
Yeah, mine's still not working either, and I'm clicking all the various links and none of them are giving me a new screen.
Sorry about that, y'all. Let me try this again. Just make sure.
I copied and pasted mine into a different window, and it advances every time.
Okay.
So that might be a better option.
Pasting. Okay. Hopefully this is working a little better.
What are you in? You're shaking your head before.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any thoughts or just immediate reactions to this question, or our reasoning behind your answer as well?
I said moderately equitable because I know it's been a focus and a consistent focus, but I think there's always going to be sort of a higher goal to reach for until there is true equity. And certainly Athens is not there yet. So I think that would be like an ongoing thing to be looking at that would not just include like what's written in the plan, but I think someone else said like how it's implemented, and whether these things actually do make a difference. The other thing I think about this is like there is an overlap between what you can do with energy to address equity, and then there's a lot that falls outside of that, that you can't do to address equity with energy. So I think, that's just something to keep in mind, that we need to think of where those Venn diagrams overlap, and be as inclusive of all of the considerations within those overlaps as possible.
Absolutely. It's not a one size fits all, and we can always do more to improve our efforts as well related to equity. Thank you.
I also put moderately equitable, and I agree with Carrie that it's been a significant discussion throughout the whole process. But when I look through the action items, I don't really see the ones that are intentionally focused at specifically what Athens, what has been identified as Athens needs. I don't see the intentionality yet. And I hope that we get there, that potentially more action items show up that are more specifically focused on that. And back to Amy's comment about some of those problems are the thorniest, and they're going to require the greatest attention and the hardest work. And so I think that it has to be an outsized amount of focus in order to even move the needle on that. So
Wow, very critical thought. Thank you. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next question? All right, so I'm going to open up our next question. We have about 2 more left after this, but hopefully the link works this time. Let me know if anyone's having any issues, and I'll drop the link again. All right, the link is now in the chat. And our next question is, how engaged do you or your community feel in the development of the plan? I'll do a screen share as well. Significantly engaged, I feel very engaged, or just moderately engaged, or not engaged at all. About 50% moderately engaged, about 30% significantly engaged, not engaged at all, at about 7%. And what prompted you for your response? For those who've said that either you feel significantly engaged or moderately engaged or not even engaged at all, would you like to share why you chose that selection as well?
Well, I think it makes a difference. I'm just the people who are on the cab that have been involved, monthly and maybe more often than that. Yeah, we've been involved a lot, but so that's you. The community part is the other part. So so there's actually there's 2 ways to answer that.
Yep, absolutely.
Tom, you nailed that for me. I was looking for, from the community standpoint, I think there were 2 things. One was we were trying to do it in the middle of a pandemic, and that was difficult. And the other is that if I were to go back and do it again, I would do a whole campaign on educating people about the energy ecosystem right at the very beginning and why it mattered to them. Because I think that was a barrier in trying to move the plan forward, as people really didn't see relevance to their lives. And it made it very difficult, because it seemed to be more esoteric than it really will be.
I think I agree with Mike. I don't, it's not that the effort wasn't there, but community engagement, public meetings, it's always a challenge. You're always going to get those people who are most involved with it or know about it, but it's hard to get the community as a whole. And I agree with Mike that, yeah, maybe if we had, of course the pandemic probably was a factor, but maybe if we had been able to have a longer term, just educating people. Honestly, I mean, in a way that is engagement. You know, I mean, I've always felt from the beginning that a lot of this stuff is very technical, and to really have an opinion, even I felt intimidated at times really commenting on things because I don't consider myself an expert in this field. So, but if we can just, it's an ongoing process. So even now we have the opportunity, if we can just really help people understand what this is all about and how it relates to them, hopefully, and think about how we can reach into communities, and maybe again, not being able to be in person before, but now maybe we can be in person a little bit more and reach more groups that way. It's an ongoing challenge though.
I feel the same way. The education piece is definitely critical to reach, and we talked a lot throughout the CAB members meetings about reaching lower income communities, and also I would say those who are less educated. And the information is so technical. That's going to be a big undertaking if we really do this the right way, to bring all communities up. And also not only that, but those who lead those efforts. So, we talked about before, like train the trainers, making sure that we have people that look and represent, different parts of their community so that they will be more engaged. Because just hearing this, most people, they're trying to pay bills. They're not, they're not going to sign up for this workshop, but if there are leaders, there are faith-based places within the organization that we really do a concerted effort to train the trainers so that they are in place to help facilitate, and they see those persons as leaders, like at advisory board members, for instance, then I think we'll have a, better success. I think that the effort was excellent. And I really do. But I just think that there's a lot more to be desired in terms of seeing more people for the communities that I represent, which are Black and low income.
Yeah, I want to speak in support of Tawana and Amy, because when I first saw this whole process, I got the impression that, okay, we're going through this like 18-month plan development, and y'all have a chance to participate in this, but once the plan's built, it's built, and that's the end of it. Whereas I'm hearing more now that this is going to be an ongoing development process over the years, and that as we go, we'll be able to have a chance to engage more citizens in the process and get them more involved.
Absolutely.
I know from the perspective of architecture, we felt like we wished there would have been more outreach to architecture firms and for participation and engagement. I'm glad that I saw Tom post the announcement that this meeting was happening, and that's been the case of a couple other ones, but there hasn't really been the direct outreach to involve us if I wasn't looking for it and asking to please be involved. So I appreciate the opportunity very much, and I know our firm does, but we would have liked more opportunity to, not have to necessarily seek it out.
Thank you for sharing, and I really appreciate everyone's transparency as well. And I did also see, I think Carrie put something in the chat. I think there's a significant amount of the community that has not engaged at all. That's not personally true for me, but I think a lot of people have not been engaged. Thank you for sharing.
I want to just say yes to everything that folks are sharing here. And I definitely want to piggyback off of what Dr. T shared, because I absolutely agree, coming from the local government standpoint, this is complex information. It does not make sense. It feels like coded language. And I think to ensure that equity lives on throughout the implementation of this plan, it is going to come down to the way that the information is communicated, the way that it's digestible and accessible, and how this team can kind of take this into different parts of the community, and why does this matter? Like how can we connect the dots of why this should matter and how this is actually going to help someone's livelihood and livability in our community, based off of the evaluation and the end result of what we're trying to implement here. So absolutely, it's really going to come down to that engagement piece of communicating in ways that are understandable. And looks like there's a good group here that can kind of help figure that out.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right, let's see. I've just dropped in the chat another question here. So how much do you agree with this statement? The statement is, this plan strongly supports vulnerable communities. So BIPOC, low income, aging populations, people experiencing homelessness, disability. Do you strongly agree with this statement? I agree with this statement. I neither agree or disagree with this statement, or I disagree or strongly disagree. See some votes coming in. And thank y'all so much for your engagement here as well. All right, so we have some votes in here. What are your thoughts? Folks who've said, I disagree, I neither agree or disagree, I agree, I strongly agree. What's your reasoning behind your answer?
I think it's just a lack of getting the community involved based off the fact that it's been a lot of COVID, and it's just not being able to get them collaboratively together to be able to provide this information to them on a regular basis and stuff like that.
You know, I think what Selah said, and just kind of piggybacking on that, you know, now that maybe I think the CAB and the community leaders and training them, as Tawana said, that, you know, getting out to smaller groups of people and really, you know, being in person, educating people. I think that we have to do that. You know, I mean, public meetings, whether they're on Zoom or whether they're, you know, in a building somewhere, there's just a lot of people you don't reach. And so there is certainly an opportunity, and I think as a member of a CAB, a member of the CAB, that will be great at this point to begin that process if we can.
As a member, as a property manager with the Athens Housing Authority, I know for a fact that with like 1,200 units, the household have not engaged in this. And just like some of the other comments, I think that if they knew about it, they could be educated a little bit more as to how they run their households and so far. So.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think housing is definitely a huge potential to get involved, especially knowing the close relationship between clean energy and housing.
I have a thought. Sorry, Michael, I think, yes, maybe more people need to be engaged and participate in it. But even from my experience as we went through this, and I want to say, I think Mike did a great job, and it was a huge task. And you tried, like, you've done such a good job of pushing this. But I do feel like, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm not sure that the field as a whole of sustainability experts understands how to make these topics relevant. So we can go have as many community meetings as we want, but until the people that are carrying the information are communicating in a way where it's relevant, and there's actually a two-way dialogue where they're learning from the people that are being impacted, and even listening to them, I don't see. That's what I felt, because even we had some side calls with some of the consultants to try to give them feedback on the recommendations and how they are not equitable, in the sense that so many of them target people that already have a certain standard of living, or a certain home type or something that's just not, it doesn't impact everyone. And so I have some questions around maybe moving forward, thinking, like expanding our thinking about who we work with to help carry the message and the meetings and the community outreach. And just one thing that comes to my mind is there's a group that I know that we work with quite a bit. Tawana is very involved with. It's a Partnership for Southern Equity. And it's people of color led, having conversations in a relevant way about how a lot of these topics are also racial justice based, social justice based, and environmental justice based. And so I think it shifts from this scientific heavy technical legalese stuff into like relevancy. And so I just question that maybe we didn't have all the right partners helping carry the load, because it's too much for staff to do alone. And so anyway, Mike, I so appreciate, but I feel like we got to get you the help you need so you feel like you're getting what you need and the community needs out of this.
Well, I certainly appreciate the grace and kindness there. I really feel like there's so much, and this is such a complex question, there's no way any one of us is going to solve the question or really have answers. I really think it is, like you said, Heather, really learning from others, being willing to engage, being willing to become vulnerable, to hear the words that people are saying, and to have the trust to be able to express things in a way that people can exchange information in a way that we learn and grow. And I think that's ultimately what it's going to take.
I think it's also about recognizing that like not every aspect of the plan should be held to an equitable standard and should be thought of through that lens, but not every aspect of the plan is going to be relevant to people. And I think I'm just saying what Heather was saying, maybe in a different way, but just, you know, some of the super technical stuff is not going to be relevant to how someone runs their household. But some of the energy, you know, some of the components of the plan will be, and those are the things that need to be communicated to people, like where, and there's also some things that, like Heather said, people do in their communities that are sustainable ways of living that are not recognized in the field, and they are not technical, you know, but they are sustainable habits and sustainable ways of being in community, and those need to be really lifted up. And you know, when you've started to recognize those and talk to people about, you know, and like bring people's expertise in like together, then you're really working, you know, there's a potential there to work more in a collaborative way with communities, and you know, cross over that divide between, I guess, the technical and what's relevant to people. But I think that's, you know, when I've listened to these meetings, it's like, yeah, I think we need to think about like what is for people, like what is for the like average person, what do they need to be engaged in, and it's not necessarily going to be the same as what a business or a restaurant is going to have to be engaged in, if that makes sense.
One other thing, I'm trying to see how I want to say this, but I guess put our money too in these areas, you know, because I believe that, you know, I know we have the inclusionary office with SALA, but also putting funds in for community educators who are the true experts of their areas. I know that in Mike's area, there's a new person that's being hired for the technical part, but once again, you know, there's no commitment for the community educator who really can take this technical stuff and drill it down in a way that, you know, that the other part of our community can understand it. And I do agree with Heather about the relevancy, because and also make sure that, you know, the persons that are being trained in the non-technical area, that they understand how this is relevant, how they're going to save money, why it's important to change your light bulbs to LED. You know, I believe there must be a commitment to finding positions like in hiring positions like those that clearly work with and understand and has the background to work with residents on that level. That's very much needed in Athens, very much needed.
Thank you so much for all of those comments. That you all brought a really critical piece here, and that's just something that, communications. How are we communicating these issues of clean energy that we care so much about? How do we get people who traditionally aren't at those tables to be very invested and know that it does impact their every single day? So thank you so much for sharing that. I do have one last question here for this activity. I'm hoping that everyone can see the link that I've just dropped in the chat, the most recent one. And then this last question is, what programs or initiatives should we prioritize in the implementation of this plan? Because we do want to get to the implementation part of things, and we'll talk about that even more in the next session. And so I'd love to know what you all's thoughts are. Feel free to type it, or if you just want to voice it here, you can do that as well.
And if you haven't had a chance to look at the pathways for those who are coming in, go ahead and list like general areas, the types of things that you think should be focused on.
Absolutely. I'll do a screen share again as well, in case anyone can't see. Love it. Building capacity for low income weatherization, hiring enough outreach staff to talk with people, share resources, make the plan relevant to people and their homes and businesses. Love that. Amazing. Community education consultant to develop and train others with a priority of need and outreach. Yes. Amazing. Thank you. Green energy job training. Absolutely. Definitely the future. Looking for opportunities to maybe install solar PV on houses with low income homeowners. Yes. As far as equity, those programs that reduce costs for residents of disadvantaged neighborhoods and job training. Yes. So, thank you. So, any other thoughts on this last question? And let me check the chat as well. Green Bank, ways to finance and give people achievable paths. Absolutely. Creating an ACC-owned solar provider for multifamily housing. Yes, multifamily housing, very critical. How to fold this into other initiatives like inclusionary zoning, maximize public funding opportunities from the infrastructure plan towards weatherization, home repair. Yes, all great opportunities here. So, outreach support again. Yes, tons of plus ones for the outreach. Funds to help make repairs necessary before weatherization can even take place in low income housing. That's absolutely right. You guys are coming in hot with these really great ideas and thoughts. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts here? Feel free to voice them, write them in the chat, or even just type it out through the link. Capacity building, technical assistance. So many great thoughts here. And we'll make sure to send all of these, all the notes from today and everything that's critical. We'll make sure to send that out to everyone as well. Hold Georgia Power accountable. Yes, they have weatherization programs, and we need to make sure they are implemented in a way that really helps people. Workforce development and training for solar and other energy topics. Yeah. So. All right, see how we're doing on time. All right. Ways to build peer learning. Have people teaching people. Yeah, definitely think tactics like that are very critical because you're hearing it from someone you know or someone that you feel is from your community. Let me check the chat. Awesome. Okay. Any other thoughts as we wrap up this first activity? Again, I want to thank everyone for your contribution, for your engagement. This was a really great activity to kick things off. But any other thoughts as we wrap up? Speak now or forever hold your peace now. Just kidding. All right. Awesome. Oh, and I see one more comment here. Equity requires connecting lived experiences to processes and outcomes with adequate resources behind it. Yes. One more here. Would be cool to have a master gardener type program for green energy solutions. Wow. Yeah, that would be really awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for your participation. I'm going to have Maria bring the slides back up so that we can transition over to the second activity. But if anyone thinks of any other thoughts or ideas, feel free to write them in the chat and let us know. Awesome. Thanks, Maria. Okay, so the next activity here is around imagining an equitable Athens. So we talked about what's currently going on in the plan, talked about our ideas and thoughts, but now we're going to transition into breakout groups to dig a little bit more. So I'm going to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we're going to go out into breakout rooms. We're going to spend about 20 minutes in those. I think we'll probably do about 3 to 4 different breakout rooms. And we have a series of questions that we really just want to open the floor for discussion so that we can talk about what our ideas are specifically around equitable engagement. And as we begin to think about the implementation side of things, how do you want to be involved? Who should we be involving? How do we get vulnerable communities excited into that process? So I'm very excited for this activity. I'm going to have Maria break us up into different breakout groups. And yes, we know. And if anyone has any issues joining your breakout, definitely let me know. But we have a few facilitators as well. So you all will be in great hands. Okay, thanks, Maria. The recordings. Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure I did that. But we talked about some good partnerships. So the CAB, but essentially community leaders that we trust that have these great relationships with the community. We talked about Athens Land Trust and the great work that they're doing, but even just bringing nonprofits along with us. A lot of times nonprofits don't always have the capacity to do everything, but how can we support them so that we can help push along their great work that they're doing? And then we also talked about resources, but more so financial resources, making sure that we have the in-kind support, the financial support, support from DOE, and just other capacity resources as well, which we thought were very important. So that was my group. I don't want to take up too much time, but anyone else from my group wanted to say anything or anything that I missed that we wanted to bring attention to? Anyone else? All right, cool. I'm going to pass it over to Maria's group.
Ooh, okay. I mean, we can all say our group was the best. It's fine. I think we touched a lot of the points that you mentioned in terms of, reaching out to community members, maybe like faith communities or like, people, like there's already a lot of networks and organizations that exist that touch a lot of the points that, this plan is going to touch. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of partners out there in terms of nonprofits and faith communities and just like community leaders who already kind of have the down low on what's happening and what needs to happen, and going to them and asking what they need from us as well, like not approaching and handing them information. So that was, I think, a huge part in terms of like the education and creating the relationships with the communities. And then I think, we talked about kind of tapping into those networks and those resources, and the resources additionally in terms of like identifying physical places that we can hold meetings, and also like how are people going to get there, kind of going through every roadblock possible for people who, especially like it's not easy to do a 3 o'clock Zoom meeting, transportation, childcare, things like that. And finding partners who could also like expand a network of just having lots of smaller meetings at easily accessible places. And then we definitely talked about kind of using other organizations who, excuse me, already have like data existing, and they continually reach out for data from communities. So we can use their data as well as Jim to kind of better monitor and use as a metric of success, but also knowing that, you know, the projects that we pick, it's all about scalability and figuring out what works and doesn't work. And my group can feel free to chime in. I told them to interrupt me whenever they wanted.
Awesome. Looks like you hit it right on the nose. All right, Erin, did you have a group too? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, it did. All right, so at a high level, when we talked about what does the plan need, the concept for that outreach person, that trainer who's good at not only, but takes technical verbiage and really making it applicable to residents and how it relates to them is a key factor. Because that education component of how are we engaging those communities and why does it matter to them is pivotal to making this work. So being able to go where they are, using public platforms, people who already have pre-existing connections with the communities that they work in. So if that's government or organizations or even small businesses, all of those need to be a part of this. And there was also a continued support from mayor and commissioner in the future. So that way long-term goals are met. And if there's changes in government, we can still maintain the track that we're on and ensure that those get completed. For partnerships, the focus here was a wide variety. There's energy providers, corporations, public health professionals. There's also the like neighborhood leaders and small businesses, especially in low income communities, and then faith-based organizations. And trying to, again, work with people who already have the pre-existing relationships. So that way we're meeting the people where they are. There was an idea of using public school and putting this in curriculums. They would like to see ACC be a part of the IRP planning process to advocate for larger energy providers and engaging the public service commissioners to, again, for the long-term accountability needs. For the resources needed to actually make this happen is well-trained staff members. So people who are either on staff with ACC government or nonprofits that you'd be able to hire, people that have long-term connections within Athens itself, that really understand the community and have the training for public engagement. And the last one is how to hold ourselves accountable, making sure that in addition to the technical energy metrics, we also have the equity measurements of things like poverty rates, education, quality of life. And if we were looking at how often we want to report these out, realistically, we saw a formal plan maybe every 2 to 3 years. But if it's possible to have something annually, that's a small summary of a very clear roadmap of here's where we are, here's where we've been, and this is what's next. That way, every year is kind of just a small check-in of are we on track? And please feel free, my group, to add anything I may have missed.
Okay, so sorry, there's a lot I wrote down, but I guess thinking at a high level and just talking about partnerships to have, church organizations were the number one, or were the first thing that we kind of talked about, but also working with organizations that kind of trickle out to other organizations. So like Council of Aging or Leisure Services, just like organizations that have other connections outside of just like energy and sustainability circles. We talked about working with school systems because kids have uncles and aunts and elders, and you know they can kind of disseminate that information out to them. Sports organizations like park and recreation organizations. The Black Chamber has a weekly conference call, so there's like a time that a subject matter expert can come on and talk about information that needs to be spread out. There's a bunch of groups that we talked about, but I can just move on to the next one, and if someone wants to call out, they can. Also rural community leaders. The best way to engage these partners, so probably follow up with the plan and make sure that some of the outcomes that are listed in the plan are actually happening. And resources needed. So Tawana really brought up technology and internet, and I think that's also very important. A lot of communities are left out of these meetings, and they're left out of a lot of information because they don't have the technology to tap into these resources. Time is also a resource. So we talked a lot about going out and meeting people where they are rather than have them come to us. We kind of talked about doing meetings at people's place of work. So like specifically in manufacturing jobs or other jobs where people kind of work in shifts, like having somebody come and do like a 30-minute presentation for each shift and then leaving brochures for them. Another important resource would be childcare and food and snacks for their children, Spanish speakers and sign language, so disability resources, maybe release the plan in different languages in the future down the road. And then how to hold ourselves accountable and make this an equitable implementation process. So we thought having an implementation committee, like we talked how the CAB is meeting right now and kind of discussing this plan, like kind of grabbing a chunk of these people or other people and just like keeping the committee kind of alive. Partnerships are key. Let's see. Figure out how many people are reading the materials that we're sending to them. So if it's like clicks or people taking brochures, just figuring out how many people are engaging, how many people showed up to meetings, how many weatherization packs were received or given out, maybe setting up a tent somewhere at like Lowe's or community centers to kind of give out more information. And sorry if I'm just rambling, I'm just reading down the list, but and when it comes to frequency for the accountability metrics, we kind of talked about maybe doing every month for the first year and then kind of like lessening the metrics reporting, like as the plan, if it gets better or if things are getting better. And I think that's a really good point because I think a lot of times people can like rush results to get their like end of year good report out. But if it's kind of more frequent, they don't really have that option. They kind of have to like do it slowly but surely. So yeah, anyone from my group, feel free to say anything that I might have missed that you thought was important.
You worked that. Good job.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. It sounds like we had some really great breakout sessions. So I'm super excited to see all of the notes. I know we are very thin on time, but we got through most of everything. But I do want to just make sure that if anyone feels like they want additional thoughts or they have additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. I provided Mike's email address for those of you all who don't have it. But we're very appreciative and grateful for you all to spend this 2 hours of space with us. So thank you so much. Maria, you can go on to the next slide really quickly. Okay, just some next steps. We're going to be summarizing all of the amazing things that you all said. And you all will be able to have information or access to that so you can know what went down in this really great call. And so we're going to be documenting all of that and then incorporating you all's feedback into our work as we continue on into the clean energy plan. So we're excited to do that. I'm very appreciative of all of your support and all of your feedback as well. And then down the line, we will be finalizing the plan. And that's also very exciting as well. And we're super grateful that we were able to get you all's thoughts and your feedback and contribution before getting into that phase as well. And next slide. Let's see. All right, and now I will pass it on to Mike to do any final closings to the group. Take it away.
Okay, Maria, where exactly can people look for the file that I'm hoping will have this slide presentation, notes, and all the documentation? Can you let people know kind of where to look for that?
Yeah, we'll put that in the Google Drive that we've previously saved the action areas and stuff, and we can send out an email on Friday summarizing everything, and I can put out the links as well as some hard documents that you can just download if that's good.
I think that would be perfect and very helpful for folks so they can renew it, review what they had. Diamond, come back to you for a second because there's what we've done. I want to let people know what we've done. Athens-Clarke County has taken out a subscription And they've shared, we actually took out 3 subscriptions and we gave one to the Inclusion Office and one to GIO, which is our Geographic Information Office, which is Joseph. And we kept one in our office, and it's called GEM. And Diamond, can you explain just real briefly what GEM is and how that can be helpful?
I sure can. So GEM is our GreenLink equity map. That's actually what I oversee, and it is an online mapping platform that allows cities, counties, community-based organizations to visualize data, so energy burden, utility burden, income level, health data, and visualize that on a neighborhood scale. So you're able to go and zoom into Athens and better understand, well, which areas have the highest energy burden, which areas have low energy burden. And so that is a tool that you all are, we have 3 subscriptions for ACC so far, and you're able to visualize that data. And that's a very critical piece for better understanding what the data looks like and the statistics specifically within your own neighborhood. So that's GEM, and I'm happy to drop some links in here as well if that's helpful.
I think people would love to be able to kind of play around a little bit with it. So as kind of summarizing today, this is really, to me, just another step along the way. This is an ongoing process. It's a generational process in a lot of ways of just continually working toward excellence. And that's what this group helped start. I think that's where we're headed, and that's what we need to really keep at. To be successful and sustainable, it really is going to rely on all of us as we expand out, and then others that join us. It's a group effort. It's a community effort. We can't do it. One of us can't do it. All of us can. And I really appreciate the time that people spent. You'll start seeing the publication information come out. And so if you have questions, thank you again. Just let us know. And thank you again for your time and for being here today and spending your afternoon with us and sharing your thoughts. If you have more, send us emails, give us a call. It'd be great.
Meet everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.